Welcome to the Carbcast podcast. I'm Oli, and I'm here with my father.
Emilio Carvajal.
Yep, that's who we are. Um, today's
Some One
episode.
of these days we'll get this.
Oh yeah, well we'll get it down to a T, I assume. Today's episode is on blacksmithing, bladesmithing, and forging in general. We got some cool stuff. The star of today's show is going to be passed over from me over to my dad. Last week's episode was pretty much me, so we're flipping roles here. So, is there anything you'd like to start off with, or should I just start out with some of the questions I have?
Start off question.
All right. The first question I have is how and when did you start blacksmithing?
How and when?
Yes.
Well, I guess when. Oh man, how long has it been? Probably 5, 6 years ago.
6 years ago? That sounds about
Somewhere
right.
right in there. I don't know honestly. I kind of go off my Instagram and I can't remember what year it said. Every time I look at it, I'm like, man, I feel like I've been forging for like 100 years.
Well, I feel like you started the Instagram probably about a year into it. I think.
Yeah, maybe that's why I feel like it's longer than it has been.
Yeah,
But anyway,
maybe
I think
even
it's been
longer.
about 6 years. Um, how? Um, well, like we said before in another podcast, I work at the prison.
Hmm.
And I got super bored with the monotonous type of work and started searching YouTube. And I started kind of doing woodwork and then picked up some random tools. And one of the tools was a lathe, a
Hmm.
wood lathe. And I got the machine, but the gouges are like chisels. They have different shapes, but they're metal, um, like a chisel. Uh, they were super expensive, even the cheap ones. So I was learning through YouTube how to just even do the woodworking and the wood turning, and so I was like, well, why can't I figure out how to make the lathe chisels, the gouges?
Hmm.
So I started watching videos on that. Um, at first, I was kind of like, it's completely out of my realm. Um, but I don't know. I don't know when it was or what video it was, but somewhere along the line, I was like, you know what? These guys are doing it, and a lot of them that I watched were um, kind of just went up same kind of scenario where they just, hey, I need it, let me go figure it out, or one, it's good content, just the trial and error. Like if they can do it, there's no reason I can't try.
Hmm.
So I started out with a grinder. If you want to go check out my Instagram, it's like one of the very first posts. Well,
Yeah,
right there.
I'll promote it here. We got his Instagram is Carbs Customs. Carb is like just like the podcast, and Customs it's a um, a skull with two hammers behind it and a mustache and a mohawk, and that's how you'll figure it
Yep,
out.
yep. That's funny. That logo. Um, Everybody thinks I work on carburetors.
It doesn't even. I don't know
No,
how. There's nothing on there that would like kind of hint towards carburetor.
just carb.
Oh, yeah. I had a couple friends talk about they looked for the podcast and all they could find was like health, like eating podcasts because they type in
Oh yeah,
carbcast and it's carbs. Yeah.
yep.
So I thought that was funny.
Well, it's funny because like that whole thing came from me working on prison. Carb. Everybody calls me carb because carbahol is too long to say.
Yeah.
So everybody knows me where I work as carb. That's where that came from. Can't remember where I left off. Help me out.
I'm not quite sure where you left off. You s-
Perfect.
um, you saw that people
Oh,
were doing it on YouTube, and you figured, why can't you do that if they can do it?
yeah. So I mean, I messed around, and actually, the house that we lived at the time had a basement, and
Hmm.
this house was, I think, at least 100 years old. So the
That's
area
pretty
that we
old.
live in, um, the old houses were heated by coal. So
Hmm.
I was watching these guys on YouTube, and I'd seen this coal down in my basement. Um, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! I have that down in my basement. They're using that, to forge and stuff." And so I made a little makeshift forge and tried it out and burned some steel, and it kind of just took off from there. I mean, I had down in the basement, I had probably one, maybe two truckloads of coal down there.
Hmm.
And in that time period that I was working or doing that stuff, I went through all of it. Um,
Yeah, blacksmithing every day. Even if
yeah, every
even
day.
if nothing really, I don't even know if you really had a plan for a lot of it. I think you were just kind of messing around
Mhm.
and seeing where it went.
Yeah, a lot of it had to do with YouTube. That is YouTube has really been
Hmm.
for everything I do. Really been like a big key. Um, but yeah, I was, I'd see something and like, well, I have to try it. And my biggest thing with anything I do, um, it's not so much um, the outcome, I guess, but to me, it's more the um, learning, the educational part, the trying to figure out the trial and error. Um, that to me is the part that's the best. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter whether it's blacksmithing, bladesmithing, mechanic work, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's to me, it's the trial and error. I really like that part.
yeah, and that's one of the questions I actually had written down, and it was just basically like, what are your learning experiences like when blacksmithing and bladesmithing?
Uh,
Are they
well, so a
mostly
lot of it.
positive, or are they a lot of swearing and stuff like that?
Well, the nice thing about blacksmithing and bladesmithing is even when you're failing, you're smashing the hell out of stuff.
Hmm.
So you can take your frustrations out on the steel or whatever you're beating on.
Hmm.
Um, but no, that like I said, that was there was a lot. I mean, that was I can tell you this. When I got to a point where I was comfortable with whatever I was making, it got boring to me.
Hmm. So you
So if I
started
wasn't
branching out.
struggling, you know, I was always just trying to push myself. Not so much push myself, but just always learn.
Yeah,
Um,
and I
so
mean,
yeah, there was a lot of struggle. There was a lot of um, am I doing it right? I'm doing it and it's working, but is there a way of doing it better? And without having somebody teaching me, I mean, YouTube is a great teacher, but
yeah.
um, not having that person right there be like, hey, if you just held it this way, just a little bit different, or um, so yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of struggle, but like I said, is my favorite part.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's kind of like one of the best ways to learn. Like, just like you
Hmm.
said, it helps to have someone there telling you, "Hey, you're doing it wrong," or "Hey, you're doing it right." But it also helps to be like, "Oh, say you made this blade and you tested it and it broke, and then you got to go back
Yep.
and try and figure out exactly
Yep.
what you did wrong to cause
Yeah.
it to break." And that's a little bit
Yeah. And
more of a learning
there,
experience.
yeah, there was a lot of blades that I got almost to complete finish and did a test on them. And I was really bad about testing my blades before I put handles on them. and finish them. And then I'd find a flaw in it, and so I'd spend more anyway. Um, but yeah, there was a lot of blades that I mean, bladesmithing is another whole nother.
Yeah, blacksmithing and
Um,
bladesmithing are way different from each other.
yeah, so blacksmithing is kind of your ironwork, hooks, tools.
A lot of a lot of stuff how was done back in the old days when
Yeah,
we didn't have these big massive factories and machines. Blacksmiths would, bust out the metal, whatever you
yeah,
needed for whatever job.
skillets,
Yeah,
spatulas, tongs. That's blade
a
or
lot of sailor
blacksmithing.
stuff.
Bladesmithing is well, just making knives, blades.
Hmm.
And that's its whole other beast. And that was actually kind of I went from blacksmithing to I'm not even sure. I know there was a certain point where I needed a blade for something. Um, I'm not even sure what it was. So
Yeah,
that
6 years
just
ago,
opened up
that's a
a
pretty big
whole.
difference.
Yeah,
Or a long time to kind of remember what you needed everything for.
yeah, I know. Um, but that again opened up a whole nother learning experience. So I dove into that, and um, I mean that one it never really kind of gets old because there's always different styles. There's always different metal.
Hmm.
Um,
There's always
there's
something,
always just something different
yeah, something
that
new
you
that you
can
can do,
change. Yeah.
something to play with and try out. Uh, yeah, I just quickly, um, just wanted to ask, what's your favorite style of blade? Since we're kind of there,
I can tell you what I hate with a passion.
and you're probably gonna get a lot of hate from this because I know I'm pretty sure I know what it is.
Well, really.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't even know what they're really called. They're cleavers. Well, I've seen them called Siberian cleavers. I've seen them called goat foot cleavers.
Let's see
That
what this
one, and
does.
then there's another one. It has a hole in the middle. I don't even know what it's called. It's something that pops up on Amazon, and they're really super cheap.
Yeah, I mean
Oh,
they look like just cleavers.
are you talking about the which blade are you thinking of?
I was thinking of a style of blade. I remember you telling me that you're not a huge fan of Japanese style blades.
Yeah. Yep, that's
That's
actually what I was thinking. I can't think of the name of it.
yeah. There's
It's
a
got a
lot of.
hole in it
I
too.
mean, there's a lot of them. So, but yeah,
Um,
a lot of people are really big fans of the Japanese style of blades.
I
Whether
want to say
it's
karambit.
a kukri. No, a kukri is not.
Kukri.
Is that?
I don't know. That's how
It's a
much I
little
hate them.
chopper. It's a little chopper. I don't know if it's Japanese or not. I think it's somewhat
I think
kukri.
it's based off of Kukri.
Type of short sword originated in
No,
Indian. Oh, so it's Indian. I thought it was Japanese. South
Kukri.
Asia. Yeah.
Is it? So it's the blade that it's a self defense. What's his name on 45 years? Is it?
Yeah.
He likes
They've
them.
had a few of them.
I can't stand that
Yeah.
stupid blade.
I always remember Japanese because there was one guy that was like a huge hardcore Japanese blade guy, and he had talked about a kukri, and he made a kukri, and but it
I think
doesn't.
it is a Kukri.
Yeah, it's a chopper. It's short sword chopping curved.
Curved. Yep.
Yeah, they're. It seems like they just come from South Asia.
Yeah, and that's actually don't know a lot of history on blades.
Hmm.
But I know a lot of stuff came from like Asia, um, or like Damascus, I believe. Well, I don't even want to get into that
Yeah, I mean I don't know a
because I
whole
don't
lot
even
about
know.
it, but I do know
Uh,
that blades uh, are prevalent in every culture because there's always a use for blades, no matter what
Yep.
you're doing, whether it's
Yep.
farming or woodworking or war or stuff like that. There's always a use for blades.
I think a lot of it came from war, and then quickly was like, "Oh, wait a minute, we can use this for." Like I said, I don't know the history, and I really, really don't care for it. Unfortunately, uh, I mean, I know there's some cool history. To me, the part that is the coolest part of all of it, and I think a lot of the history focus on the weapons and
Hmm.
the culture, but to me, um, how they got to that point is the biggest thing, and that's not even with just blades or blacksmithing. It's anything
Yeah, how they got
like
there,
how they got there.
how they
Like we were
figured it
talking
out.
about guns last week. Um, anything like how did they get to that point? That
Yeah,
and it's that trial and error. I mean, they didn't have YouTube back then. It was just
let's try it out.
yeah. And I know like the Japanese swords. Everybody thinks their blades are super, and might get some heat for this, but I don't really care. Um, it's probably one of the reasons I'm not super impressed. But yeah, they did make great swords, and I'm not going to take anything, and it doesn't even matter what I say really about them because, um, but to make a Japanese sword like a katana, in the Damascus, which really wasn't Damascus, I think it was, man, it's been a while, so I can't remember.
Yeah,
I think it's 3 layers. 3 layers. It's
Sanmai.
Sanmai.
It's where they
Yeah,
fold the pieces around the
look
middle
at
of
you.
one. Yeah, I remember this
Yeah.
stuff pretty well.
So, um, but that whole process was to eliminate um bad material.
Hmm.
It wasn't to get the cool design. It wasn't to
It was
any of
to
that stuff.
it
It
was
was
what they had to work with, and they had to make
yep,
quality rather than
yep. To make the
looks
quality, they had to forge out the bad. Um,
or
so
work with it,
yep,
basically. I mean,
yeah.
I'll kind of
Actually, yeah. That's actually a better way
yeah
of saying it because
working with what they
be,
got.
yeah, well, because they would get the good steel, the stuff that would hold an edge,
Hmm.
and they'd use the not necessarily bad steel, but the softer steel um,
On
on
the
the
spine.
spine to help uh, keep it from breaking. It had flexibility,
Yeah,
so that's kind of
so
what from that.
so what you want from specifically what he's mentioning is that they take a softer steel and put it in the middle because you want softer on the spine. That way it can absorb, like
Actually,
absorb some
it
energy or what?
so your hard steel
Hmm.
is in the center, but your soft steel goes um, just up to the edge, and then
Ah, yeah.
you fold it over, and then it's your spine.
Hmm. So the soft
You
steel is the
really,
spine.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the soft steel, they want the spine to be softer so it absorbs energy, and you want
yep, yep,
the blade itself to be harder so that it can sharpen well.
yeah,
So it's pretty cool how they would use the worst metals that they had and kind of make it into a
uh-huh,
quality blade by
yep.
combining it.
And there again, it's that trial and error.
Hmm. Yeah, I assume it definitely was trial and error. I mean, that's
But
pretty much what you can bring anything down to once you figure certain things out as trial and error.
yeah, yeah, I've been watching some stuff lately, and we can go into it later. I was another podcast, but just how they got to that point. These guys that are 60, 70 years old. You know, like I said, back then they didn't have YouTube.
Hmm.
and they were like the pioneers. They were like they really started it, and everybody's really improved on it. But they were like the godfathers, the ones that stepped out of the boundary and like, hey, let's try this, and went from there and made a culture. Is
Yeah,
basically what they did.
yeah. Blades have definitely been, and metalwork has always been an important part in history. And I always found it really, really cool how a lot of the older guys did stuff. Like, I watched a series, I can't remember who it was for the life of me, but he's like an old school kind of living guy where he likes to live back how they kind of did before modern
Oh
days,
yeah.
and he was making his own like muzzle loader or musket, and he was doing all of
Oh yeah.
the metal work and the woodwork for it, and it was very very interesting to see how people back then would have done it rather than now where we have all these machines that kind of do it for us.
Yeah, and to do it that way, it's so time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like the focus and the. I mean, if you messed it up, I mean, you have to start all over to make that kind of steel. It takes like oh, I don't say 24 hours, but
I don't know.
I don't know if you've ever watched them burn down steel or
Mm-hmm.
coal and or iron to make ingots,
Yeah,
but it takes 12 plus hours to do it, maybe even longer.
yeah.
Um,
Just I think it's
but
crazy how they would these people they were gunsmiths as well, and they
mhm,
would be the ones that like the government would hire to mass produce their rifles. So think about how long each one would
mhm,
take, and then they'd have to mass produce several thousand of them.
yep, yep. You got to design it, build it, go through all the flaws,
Hmm.
figure all that out, and then tear it down and figure out how you can mass produce.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
That's like Henry Ford.
Yeah.
Like to be able to mass produce vehicles.
Hmm.
I mean, that's and which led to everything we do now. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing we do that is not mass produced if
Hmm.
it wasn't for him. Well, not necessarily him, but
Yeah. Not. I mean, he
he was
definitely
a big,
helped spark a lot of what we
yeah.
have today.
So if we're completely wrong on any of it, just
Yeah. Yell at us.
we're not we're not experts. Just what we know, kind of.
Hmm.
But still, I mean, it's one of those all of it. Like you said, the gunsmithing, even building the cars. You know, to me, like building the cars, they had molds. How do you make a mold? Big old molds that could stamp out
Yeah.
steel in the same shape
You have to attempt to
hundreds of
make it
thousands of
first some
times.
other way.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Weird.
All
Yep.
stemming from like the first civilizations using
Mhm.
metal instead of whatever the hell they used.
Could you imagine like going from like a stick and a rock
Hmm.
axe to
Iron
uh
or
to an iron axe? Yeah.
yeah, I think it was. I don't know what. I think it was iron, and then like the Bronze Age, and then
Oh yeah, bronze.
I'm not sure about what they used first or whatever, but they experimented with different metals and tried to figure out which one worked the best. And eventually, they got there.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you imagine going from using a stone to to bronze. I mean, bronze is not that strong. I mean, it is, but it ain't.
But it's probably a lot easier to work with than stone is.
Yeah, but your workload just cut in half, and
Hmm.
then once you figure out iron, you cut it in half again. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't
it gets
imagine me like, oh,
better
I
and
figured
better.
this. Oh, I
Yeah, it's like, oh
figured this.
look, look what I did.
Yeah, and everybody's like, oh, you're an idiot.
Then he goes and kills something with it, and they're like, wow, it didn't break.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
that stuff's pretty insane to me. I love history so much. It's great, and there's definitely
That
a rich history with blacksmithing and bladesmithing and tools.
yeah.
There's definitely a rich history there.
I find it funny. A lot of people are like, I get it a lot, and oh, a lost art, and no,
Yeah,
it's
no,
not.
it never will be. Yeah, I
No.
mean, you could even argue that it'll never die. I mean, it won't
Yeah.
die. Even, especially if like society were to ever fall, well, 99% of us rely on factories building these things for us, and if society falls, those won't be there. So the people that still keep this trade alive, like you, are very almost invaluable in your knowledge and skill.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not me, but yeah.
I
It.
mean, you're pretty good at it.
But you're right. It's that happens. You lose power in weapons. I mean, weapons is the first thing, but that comes to mind. But like even crops and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Going back
Yeah.
again, back 100 years to where they're figuring out. I watched a documentary on one of the guys that made, and I think he mass produced them. The God, I can't remember what they're called. It's not a disc, but it's for plowing. Oh, well, I guess it's a plow.
Oh, it's a plow. Yeah, plow. That's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say. Is plows like using metal for a plow is almost a necessity. Almost. It
yeah,
definitely speeds up
yeah.
everything.
And I can't remember if it was the shape or the steel. I can't remember what documentary I watched on it, but it was really interesting
Mm-hmm.
just to see. And he was just like a nobody and just came up like it was a necessity. He's like, "Hey, I'm tired of building the same stupid thing. Let's try to figure something else out." And once he figured it out, it like took off, and now his family's set for the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
all their lives.
Yeah. Has the patent for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, that's just like a crazy thing to think about because if society does fall, our biggest issue is going to be food, and
Mm-hmm. Yep.
without these metal workers, like not only hunting is going to be more difficult, but growing the food themselves, and that's the biggest thing is growing it is going to be. I don't think people realize how difficult growing food on a mass scale could be.
Oh no,
Even, I
no.
mean, think about, oh, we lose everything and all our metal workers are gone. Well, we have to dig these holes to plant our food by hand. Think about how long that's
That's
going to
that's
take.
when you that's when you grow your fingernails out.
Yeah, just start digging at it like a dog.
Yep.
They break.
Yeah.
You gotta go
Yeah.
to the next one.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's incredibly important that people understand this kind of stuff. And
Well, like I said, it's not a lost art. There's enough
mhm,
information, and really, honestly, comes down to survival of the fittest.
mhm.
Like if you want crops,
You gotta
you'll
farm.
figure out how to bend a piece of metal.
Hmm.
And luckily, we have enough metal laying around that we don't have to
Yeah,
go and
it might not be that difficult to go and create some that's
yeah,
good. I mean, it's not gonna take a whole lot either. It's I mean, a
no,
soft metal is still better than your bare hands.
yep, yep.
Yeah. Alrighty, so I just have a little bit more questions we got to get to here. I have a question saying, are you proud of the work that you've done?
Yeah. Um. So I used to sell a lot of blades, a lot of knives. Um. And it got to a point where I was making so money that I had to really pick and choose, and it would, just depending on what the person wanted, and mostly what they wanted to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was so busy, and I hate to say this, if they wanted a knife, and a lot of my friends have my knives, and but couldn't afford it, and honestly, I put more into the knife than I was paid for. I guarantee you that on every
Uh
one
huh.
of them.
Yeah, I'd bet money
Um,
on that.
but they're still at a point, because you know 2 years ago, like you said, it was nonstop every day. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything because I was forging knives and making knives and finishing them and stuff like that. So then I got to a point where I was like, okay, you know what? If somebody's want to spend $100, I really got to be, give them $100 blade.
Yeah, that's give them $100.
But at the same time, I know I put more into it than it was worth.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of stuff that scratches and little things
Yeah, you spend a
that
little
I
too
could
much time
never.
perfecting it.
Yeah, and I've never really perfected any of it. I always try to push the boundary and not the boundary, but my boundary. Um, actually to think of, they're never where I want them to be, but it's financially like I have to be like, okay, stop.
Yeah, it's gonna cost a whole lot more, and I'm not getting that money out of it.
I I would put 30, 40, hours into it, more than that. I know I would,
Yeah,
for $100 knife. And if you do the math on that plus material, I'm doing it for cents.
yeah, it's not a whole lot.
So it there's a lot of I know there's a handful that I'm like, yeah, those are awesome.
Hmm.
Those are one of them. I wish I would never sold. I can't even remember who bought it, but um, that was the one that was my baby. That one I loved. Um, but
So
yeah, I always, yeah.
yeah, it does sound like you are pretty proud of the work you do, even if you don't realize it. It sounds like no matter what kind of money you're getting through, you're putting your heart and soul into each one, and it makes I would assume you're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a point where like financially I had to stop,
Yeah,
but if it wasn't for that, I would even go further than I did. Yeah, I always try to be proud of what I did. I always put a ton of work into it and effort into it. And there's tons of blades. I can't even tell you how many that I've forged multiple times, just to get it done and right. And, you know, it takes me 6 hours to forge it, which never took me.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
But yeah, I always tried hard. That was always my thing, is just do good work. That's what my dad taught me.
yeah, and
It's kind
it's
of funny because one time my dad was working on your grandpa,
yeah,
if you didn't know who that was.
I
uh, we were working on, and I don't know if I've told you, I might have told you this story already, but we were working on, he's an electrician and he was doing side jobs, and um, it was the middle of winter, and we're working on this water heater, and it was on like an old double wide, so the water heater was on the outside of the building, and um, we were in the rain and the snow and about 2 inches of water, and Dad always liked like his wires to be a certain like he'd bend them like square, like you
get
know,
them good looking.
yeah, good looking, and I remember telling him like, hey, that's good enough, and I'm not kidding you. This was probably like 10:30 at night, in the winter, and it was like literally snowing, raining on us, and just miserable outside, and he jumped my ass about it. He's like, good enough is not good enough. He's like, this is my work, and I'm gonna be proud about it.
Hmm.
And I always remember like kind of being a little butthurt. I just wanted to go home and eat. It's fucking
Starving.
freezing.
I'm gonna die out here.
Yeah, yeah. We're standing in 2 inches of water, and you're working on a water heater with electricity. and I haven't ate dinner. Anyway, that always sat, and um, I don't know. Maybe I'm in that extreme at some point. I don't know. I don't see me that extreme with that kind of work, but maybe I am. Maybe that's why I don't
You,
make money on.
I don't know. I'd say you definitely are at a good place with it. Like, you definitely know that if you put out good work, people are going to appreciate it. But at the same time, like you said, there's only so much that you can put in with how much you're receiving from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that always sat in me. That was always it wasn't. I mean, and I could see how people could think it's negative, but that it was a learning lesson for me. Like,
Yeah.
even though, like, we could have died from electricity or hypothermia, um, it wasn't so much of that. It was put the best you can into it, even though you're not getting what you're supposed to get.
hmm Yeah, and that's really just a be proud of your work kind of thing. Like,
Yep,
this is what you
absolutely.
do. Be glad
Yep,
be proud that you can actually pull it off.
yep.
Now, the next one once again is kind of similar. Did you ever get as or did you ever think that you would get as far as you actually did?
No,
Like, when you started, you never once thought in your life that you could bust out a blade in a day, a quality blade in a day.
no, absolutely not.
Even to the point, like, you already said no, right? But like, it's crazy that when you first started making those little gouges or whatever for the woodworking lathe,
Yeah.
like, not a single thought in your brain was like, oh, maybe this will be something bigger.
No, absolutely not. It never, like I said, it was always about the learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, at one point and really, really late into it, was like, oh, maybe I can make it a career.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you literally got on to Forged in Fire. So that's a pretty big accomplishment from creating gouges for your lathe off YouTube.
yeah, yeah. That I mean, yeah. That I didn't. No, I never thought that would even happen.
Yeah, I highly doubt that it was even a glimpse of a thought in the back of your head somewhere. Like,
No, and honestly, I mean, when I started, I don't think that show was even around. But I remember
I don't know.
when it started, it was well. Everybody always told me, "Oh, you ever seen that show, Forge and Fire?" And which I didn't have that kind of TV, so I was no, no. Finally when I watched it, I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah.
That's cool, cool little channel. I mean, like there's no other show like it at all.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I take it back. I think there's one more, but I don't think it lasted very long. But um, no, absolutely not. Never, ever did I think that would happen.
That's it's a big accomplishment. I mean, I remember
Or luck.
or look, I don't know. I remember at one point it was probably like a year, maybe a little more than that before you actually got onto the show where you were sitting there and watching it and we were talking about it quite a bit and you said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, I could bust out a blade in 3 hours. No doubt about it. You could do it." And I was sitting there and I was like, I'm not sure. I know that you can do really well, and I saw your work, and I was like, oh yeah, this is good stuff, right? But I was like, 3 hours, not quite sure, right? And then a little bit after that, the Mortal Kombat movie came out, and I remember this day
Oh yeah.
like it was yesterday. The Mortal Kombat movie came out, and we were watching it, and you were talking about how cool that kunai was that Scorpion uses, and
Yep.
I was like, oh yeah, maybe you should make it sometime, or somehow it came up like that, and you're like, I'll make it right now, and I was like, okay, yeah, like we'll see it done soon, but you know, um, so the movie ends, and you're like, let's go outside. He goes out. 2 hours later, he has a kunai, rope attached to it, strong enough that he's throwing it at a brick wall and it's not taking any damage. And I was like, what in the world just happened? 2 hours later, and he had it fully done. And that's when I was like, okay, this man got it. He got it.
Yeah.
Do you remember that as well as I do?
Oh yeah, I do. I do.
That's still I think I've told that story a couple times to some friends because it's just pretty impressive.
Well, and see that those kind of stories mean more to me than anything else.
Yeah.
And even like being on Forge and Fire, like it was definitely an experience for me, but it like people always tell me like, well, you know, you lost, whatever. Like
Yeah.
I don't give two shits.
I mean, in my eyes, you didn't even like you lost, right? But like, who else gets to say they went like to go film for a TV show that's almost purely based around skill?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
the real win right there. It doesn't matter if you win or lose the actual competition. Like you got to do that when 99% of us can't do that.
Yeah, but it was still for me. It was a huge part of it was I want to do it for my kids. I mean, yeah, it was awesome for me to do it. Win or lose, I didn't give. I don't care. But for my kids and family to be able like, hey, you my dad made it or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and he lost. So
Yeah, no, I always tell people if it somehow comes up, bladesmithing, blacksmithing, or forged in fire, whoever I'm with, I'm like, hey, guess what? My dad was on Forged in Fire. They're like, what?
yep,
No way, that's super cool. Like, what episode was he on? Blah blah blah. And they start asking me all these questions, and I was like, I could tell you a little bit about it, but really, you got to hear it from him. You got to hear it from him.
yeah.
And I
Well,
think I think that's what we should do right now, if you don't mind.
no, I don't. Well, what part?
I wanna hear the story. We got 20 minutes left, and I mean we went an hour and a half on the last episode, so you got an hour if you want it.
Okay.
But I'd like to hear it
What?
almost from start to finish. Like how did you actually get onto the show?
Oh, how did I get on Forge? Oh, so actually, that's. I think the whole process of getting to Forge and Fire was better than being on Forge and Fire, even though being on Forge and Fire was pretty awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
just like everything I experienced through the whole thing. So a buddy of mine, well, everybody always told me like I told him a bladesmith. Oh, have you seen that show Forge and Fire? Oh, you should be on that show. You should try it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at one point I applied and never heard nothing back. And I think it was almost like a year later.
Mm-hmm.
A buddy of mine, Wes Tankersleeve, he has a podcast that I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, I watched it every Wednesday too.
Let me know the name.
Oh, One Drink Wednesday.
One Drink Wednesday.
One
Oh,
Drink Wednesday.
that's a good title.
Yeah, and he's got another one. It's something success, but One Drink Wednesdays with another dude. But anyway, Wes sent me the link, and I think I made him some stuff. I made him a Punisher steak flipper or something like that. I have a rose spike that I'll never ever make again. But anyway, he sent me the link, and I sat on it for a month or so, and then I was like, you know what? Let me try it. I mean, worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
Um, so I fill out everything and send it to him. And I don't think I heard anything for about a couple months. My story probably changes every single time I say this.
Maybe.
I'll
I'm
just
not
tell
sure.
the story, but I don't think I heard anything for a little bit, and then I felt like it was for a month, and then all of a sudden I just got like email after email. Fill out this, fill out that, and then nothing. Didn't hear anything. And this was like probably like December-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And right around, let's see, February, March. Yeah, February, they got a hold of me again, and it was like, boom, boom. Hey, we have this interview. We have this interview. I'm like, whoa. So anyway, I went through all the interviews, and again, nothing. I didn't hear nothing for a couple, 4 weeks or something like that.
Yeah,
A
about a
month.
month.
Yeah. That's 4 weeks. Yeah. Um, and then they emailed me, and they're like, "Hey, we want you." Well, I did some, yeah. Like each interview I did, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm getting closer. So I was getting all excited, but I was like, don't get too excited because it really doesn't mean nothing. But each interview got more intense. It was like it went from like a written or email to a phone call to a video chat, and then video chat with multiple people, um, and then I didn't hear nothing, and then boom, they were like, "Hey, we want you on the show. We'll be there in." So they filmed it different than they usually do, but they were like, so they the way they did it is everybody in the competition that the episode I was in filmed and forged the finale weapon first,
Yeah.
and then we went to the
Before.
competition. So they're like, "Hey, we'll be there in I think it was 10 days or something stupid." So I was like, "What?"
Yeah, I had 10 days, and this is right after you just moved into a new house and you were still setting up your shop.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't have like I had some of my stuff, but nothing to forge what they wanted. And I mean, I had the tools, but they were in storage, and so I decided to do the right thing and remodel my shop and bring all my tools in. And within 7 days, I had my shop going.
Yeah.
And they showed up and filmed it, which unfortunately nobody will ever see that. Which is probably good because it was pretty brutal.
I don't know. That seems like a better. I feel like I want to watch that more than the actual what was released.
Actually, those guys were pretty relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it probably was better, except for the stupid dog and the stupid rooster across the street.
They
They'd
kept on
sit there
ruining
because they
your
had their
thing.
mics and yeah, they're like, hold on a sec. Okay, go. Okay, hold on. Go. Anyway, I was like, I can go kill that rooster right now. I don't care. Like, no, no. You
No,
serious?
don't do
Like,
that.
no, yeah. But yeah, so we filmed that first part, and then it was so like they gave me within. They're like, okay, 10 days. You got a camera crew showing up at your place. Um, you're gonna forge the finale weapon, and then you're gonna go straight from that. I think it was like 3 days. No, I think it was 4 days.
It's pretty soon.
4 days later, you're gonna fly. Yeah, 4 days later, you're gonna fly to Connecticut and compete, in the challenge. Um, so it was luckily for me the way things worked out with work and my work schedule, and so basically I worked. I think it was so I worked three, no, two 16-hour shifts and an 8-hour shift, and then I got off and I'd come home and work on the shop, get everything set up. So I worked completely straight for like 3 weeks. It was crazy, crazy. Got on. Oh, so okay, I'm getting way off track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I want to, just before you continue, I want to say that the episode you were on is season 19, episode 14, and it was titled...
Season 9.
Yeah, season 9, that's what I meant. What did I say?
19.
What in the world? Yeah, season 9, episode 14.
So, in the future...
in the
Back
future.
to the future.
Yeah. It was in the future, and we're talking about it early. Anyway, the episode title was Out to Sea.
Out to Sea.
If anybody wants to see that, Out to Sea, season 9, episode 14. Alrighty, now we can get back to it.
See, and I always thought it was 12. But
doesn't look like
whatever.
it.
Out to Sea.
Maybe.
That's what I always tell people. I don't know what it is. I know it's season 9, Out to Sea.
Well, okay, so I looked it up, right, and I see the episode right here. It says Out to Sea, season 9, episode 14, but then on the History Channel, season 9, episode 14 is a different episode.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know. That's what I got too. Is some people will be like, "Oh, it's on 14," and others will be like, "Oh, it's on 12." That's why I would just say it's Out to Sea.
Yeah, Out
to
Sea.
Sea.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps saying, oh yeah. Okay, continue.
Yeah, so they showed up. We filmed for 4 days. I worked 3 days straight, and then had to fly out to Connecticut. I worked at my work. Showed up at the airport 15 minutes before my flight took off, and I was so proud because I was early.
Yeah.
And like an idiot. Well, I can't be early to anything. I mean, I was early, but
you can't.
I got there and I was like, heck yeah, we made it early, and get to the little staging area or whatever, and they're like, oh no, you can't make it. I'm like, what? And go through the process, and they're like, well, you should have been here 45 minutes ago to get your luggage on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna have to wait till tomorrow. I'm like, well, we film tomorrow. Like, I land in Connecticut tonight and we film in the morning. And they're like, oh no, you can't get your luggage. I was like, well, what if I leave my luggage? They're like, yeah, but you only have 10 minutes to get on the plane. I'm like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. So gave my luggage to my wife and gave her a kiss and the kids a kiss and ran down the thing and got on the airplane out. Like, they were loading. They were already loading. I think they were pretty much done. Got on the airplane, flew to Chicago, I believe, which was insane. I had a little bit of a layover there, I paid $18 for a cheeseburger with no ketchup on it.
No ketchup on.
Yeah, I was super
Oh
pissed.
God.
Super pissed. They gave me two those little tiny packages of ketchup.
Mm-hmm.
I was super pissed. Anyway, got on the plane there. Flew to Connecticut, which that whole process right there, I've been on a plane one time when I was a kid. I flew to Portland, which is only like a 1 hour trip from where I live. And I had a parent that was responsible, and so that whole process of flying clear across the country. If you guys don't know, I live in Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
So from Idaho to Connecticut,
Pretty long.
layover in Chicago, which is just a massive airport. Made to my spot, flew to Connecticut, and then there was issues there to the airport. Fortune Fire had everything set up. They had an Uber or something I think they call them different over there, but a ride for me, and they said they showed up, but they weren't there. So, like, they call you several times, and if you don't answer or whatever, whoever my ride was playing games, screwed me over, left. So my contact for Fortune Fire, I'm trying to get a hold of them, and I'm like, hey, my ride left, and I don't have no way of getting to wherever I'm supposed to go, which was 45 minutes from the airport.
Whew.
Mystic, Connecticut. So, and I didn't have any money because, like, everything was just thrown on me at one time, and I wasn't prepared for it. And so I had to make phone calls. Luckily, my sister was up and sent me some money, and I got an Uber, which was $75.
Oh my lord.
Yeah,
So
ridiculous.
now you're out like $100 for a cheeseburger and an Uber.
I know. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. They said they were going to reimburse me for the ride, and I never said nothing.
Oh God.
But so I get to the motel or hotel or whatever it is, and I think it was like 1:30. But you're talking time change too, and jet lag, which I didn't feel the jet lag so much.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking time change, and I can't remember what the time change is. So it's a chunk of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to be on set at 6. So I show up in the airport or at the hotel at 1:30. I don't even think I had time to be nervous. I was so tired and everything else. So I think I get like 4 hours of sleep or something like that, and I think that day we were like forging.
Yeah.
Which that whole experience was just insane.
Oh yeah.
Like you
it's
said,
pretty wild.
yeah. If you watch the episode, like, you don't really get to see the whole thing, but I forged 2 blades. I've been asked several times, like, well, hey, were you nervous? Like, were you stressed out? Like, were you, whatever? I'm like, no, I just went there to have fun. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just an experience for me. So it was just, I think the only stressful part is I was trying to figure out how to get from the hotel, which I called my wife and I was like, hey, this is where I'm at. I'll stay the night at the airport lobby. I don't care. They'll figure it out. They'll call me in the morning. They'll figure it out, But at no point during the forging process, I honestly don't think there was any point that I was stressed.
Yeah.
Like my blade, I don't know if I want to ruin it for anybody, but go watch it. I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty cool. Well, actually, I got to tell a little bit about that. So, um, the the forging challenge was coal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, that's what I started using. That's how I learned. So that was kind of where they set me up. Like, and when we had interviews, like, hey, we want you to win. We want to set everybody up to win. So coal. That's what we're going to do. Um, so one of the biggest issues with coal is you can get it so hot it will literally melt steel, which is like 2,200 degrees or something. I don't
Yeah.
even remember. I can't remember. I know I used to know it at one point, but it's stupid hot. I mean, it melts steel. Um, so that's one of the big downfalls of steel or coal. But so during the forging process, I was forging my blade, and I think I was only like an hour and a half in to the forging, and I pretty much had my blade where I wanted it. And they came up, and like you watch Forging Fire, they're like, come up with the camera and like, hey, what's going on? What's this? What's that? And their question was like, what's it like forging with coal and the ups and the downs of it? And so I'm sitting there talking to them, and I had my blade sitting on top of the fire. And as soon as they walked up, I was like, okay, pull my blade out of the fire, put it on top of the fire. I'm sitting there talking to them, but I'm slowly cranking the fire, which I shouldn't have done that. Um, anyway, telling them what happens when you use a coal fire and what could happen, and what I was explaining exactly happened to my blade. So I tried to fix it, but you're gonna have to watch the episode to see that part. And
Yeah.
I was really hoping that would work. I was really, really hoping that would work. Just because I've never seen anybody do it on the show.
Yeah, and
Um,
they had a pretty rough. Like, I think that episode as a whole was kind of like thrown together. Honestly, I just to kind of like go over this. I'm on Reddit, and there's people talking about the episode, and this guy lists like six different things that are at a. He lists the six different things of why it's like it was a difficult episode. And the first
mhm,
one is he said that it was
mhm,
5 hours long, and he's like, well, first off, usually they're 3 hours long, so why was it five?
mhm. It was a 5 hour challenge. It
Mm-hmm.
was and it was definitely longer than most challenges, because most challenges I think are
They're about 3 hours.
3, and then you go into the handle.
Yeah, and you get more time for a handle.
And our blade, which by the way, I can't pronounce his name. You have to look it up. I can't pronounce the name. The guy that made um, the blade that we were supposed to copy,
Mm-hmm.
that blade is so freaking awesome. And how he does it, and he actually explains it on YouTube. So if you guys are interested, go look it up. I can't think of his name. Maybe we'll put a link in there. But awesome blade.
Lynn Rhea.
Yep,
Lynn Rhea.
yep, yep.
Yeah, I found that on the Reddit as well.
Super. That guy's like 60. No, he's actually older than that. He's got to be like 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. Still forging those blades. That blade when I seen it, when he stuck it. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head. The co-host or the host
Mhm.
stuck it in that stump. I was like, oh my word! And my first thought was, I'm gonna try and make that exactly my knife exactly like his,
Mhm.
and I should just focused on making the knife.
Making the knife, not letting it burn up.
Yep.
Yeah. So to that, yeah, this guy says another couple of things that were difficult for this challenge was that it was a coal forge and it
Mm-hmm.
was hand
Mm-hmm.
cranked, so there was no real
Yep.
way of controlling it properly. I mean, you could, but it was difficult. And
So really
then,
quickly on the hand crank,
mhm,
a normal coal forge hand crank has a super long crank on it, right?
mhm,
And the gears are set up to where um like one crank like rotates the fan like I don't know the rotation on it, the ratio or whatever,
yeah,
but basically one crank with the long hand crank on it is like 1 to 3 or something like that. Don't quote me on it, I don't know.
yeah.
It's a lot. Those uh fans, those cranks that they had on it, it was like 1 to 1.
So it was very difficult to control it,
Very, very,
and
very
like you're
difficult.
gonna
It
take a
was,
lot out of you doing it.
yep. They
Yeah.
were super small fans. The handles were super small. It was 1 to 1. I'm positive on that. Like
Mhm.
it was,
It was rough.
it was rough.
Yeah. And then once again, this guy states that you are forging in broad daylight. So not only is that going to take a toll on you by cranking this thing constantly, but also it's hard to see the color of the blade
Like,
itself.
and that's probably out of all of it, that was the most difficult part. Not
Was
seeing the color.
yeah, not seeing the color.
There was points where um I was trying to use the shadow of the anvil.
Mhm.
And actually, speaking of the anvil, real quickly, um, anvils are supposed to be set up like if you were a bladesmith, blacksmith, it's supposed to be set up to you, right? So it's if you put your hand or your hand down, your arm down, and close your fist, the top of the anvil is supposed to be just below your fist.
Mhm.
And this one was set up for
A tall person.
a tall person, like a 10-foot person. uh, but yeah, so there's that, and then color. The sunlight was a huge issue.
Mhm.
Um, but it was something like I said. I used the shadow of the anvil, and actually watching the episode, you can see me forging what looks like black steel, um, but
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably wasn't as bright as it should have been, but it was still. And actually, that might have been my downfall. Uh, the color issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just the light. I mean, it plays a huge effect on the work. Like I said, it looks like in the video in the show um, that I'm forging black steel, and actually, I think all of us look the same thing. But um, which they probably could have been a lot hotter, but it's really hard to judge. In the dark, um, like a dark red color, which is about where you want to stop forging, um, to a point. Um, in the dark red is about where you want to stop. In the light, dark red looks black.
Mhm.
Um, So you got to kind of get a feel for it. And I had a little bit of experience because my forge when I started was set up outside.
Hmm.
So and I kind of got a feel for how the metal worked, if not so much the color, how the metal worked. If it didn't want to move, I needed more heat. If it was soft, I knew I was good to go. So, um, but like I said, it still was my downfall.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like while watching it, you could definitely tell that you had a better idea of what was going on than the other two did. With just all the circumstances, like the coal forge and the fact that you actually had a really well shaped, like almost, I don't want to say blade because it's not a blade at that point, but it was very well shaped. Whereas the other two were basically just rectangles, which, like you said, they're great people. You don't want to throw shade at them, but yours was shaped and theirs wasn't. So
Yeah.
it really felt like, at least watching it, that you knew what you were doing. Obviously, you didn't really portray that very well, but it looked like it. It looked like it.
Well, and I guess that's kind of where I was going with the begin or earlier, where they were talking to me and I was explaining. I don't know if we finished that, but
Hmm.
um, as I'm explaining it, the benefits and the non-benefits or whatever of a coal forge, um, I burned up my blade.
Yeah.
Um, it was pretty funny. Like I pulled it out of the fire and like I think that's part of the one of the scenes is I pull it out and I'm like, that's what happens or something. I can't remember what I said, but
Yeah.
and I remember the guy that was interviewing me, like the look on his face was like, oh my gosh,
Oh no.
like just yeah,
You just spoke it into
and
existence.
yeah, and and like they just like completely just like ran off and um, I was like, well, never. Let me try to work through it, and I probably spent a little more time than I needed to on it, but
Hmm.
I don't know. It was I sit there and think about it sometimes. Not sometimes, but I've thought about it one time. Like, what if I would have got that blade done? I could have been sitting there for at least maybe possibly an hour. That
Oh
would have been
yeah,
kind of
you
cool.
had. I mean, you had enough time. Like, we're gonna spoil it, but you had enough time to put out another piece that was well
Hmm.
shaped as well, and
Yep.
almost there. So
Yeah,
you
and
definitely
so
had enough time.
the piece of steel that I first picked was the same piece of steel I picked on the second time, and that one was still short of what I needed. Um,
Do you think the steel you picked specifically contributed to you burning up the blade and having
no,
faults in it? No, you think it was like basically your fault?
no, I think if there would have been well to do what I wanted to do, I mean, I got what I wanted done with this same steel. It
Hmm.
was I don't know, probably like 7 inches long, 3/4 inch thick. Um, and it was the same piece of steel I picked from the get go. Um, I mean, it's TV. There's stuff that they make look different.
Yeah.
But it was the same exact piece of steel. Um, so it would have not changed anything. I still didn't have enough steel to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to make the exact copy of what the example was.
Hmm.
Um, but I was still able to complete that. So I don't know what's his name.
Who?
Well, anyway, it don't matter. I've seen his videos and I can't remember what he starts out with, but I don't think I could have stretched it any further.
Yeah.
I think we made an 11-inch blade. I can't remember,
Hmm. Yeah,
but
I don't remember
I,
either.
I definitely stretched it. It was stretched more than I. If it was something I was making to sell, it would never cut it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have done
But
it. All right, so what? Let's see. I kind of want to keep exactly what happened a secret so that people can go and watch it instead. So I think we're good there then, and just kind of unless you have anything you want to say about it, the experience.
um, I I mean the whole experience was crazy from the time I got there to. I mean, I showed up with no. I guess I could have put that in before, but I showed up with no clothes. What I had on my back is what I had.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, Jonathan, the other contestant, he drove from New York, so he had a vehicle. Um, and then we were able to take that and go get me some clean underwear and a toothbrush. Um, but and just the whole experience was just from the front to the back. It was just insane. It was so much fun. Um, but
Yeah, and
I don't know. It's one of those things. Like I said, same thing with from when we started. Is people started with nothing and tried it out. I tried it out. I didn't say, "Oh, I can't do that." I just tried it and it worked out. And you know, you gotta just try it.
mm-hmm.
Worst thing I could say is no.
Just try. The
Yeah,
story of life or whatever your life lesson is just
yeah,
try.
yeah.
um, so I know you've told me, but you had like a good kind of experience with a few of the judges themselves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I tell people about this a little bit, but I don't know exactly what it was. So if you want to cover it.
So they really, really kept us secluded from everything, like the whole process. We had to spend, um, you know, it took them 3, 4 hours to sit up every day, and we had to spend the time in like a separate room. They wouldn't let us talk to anybody. No, none of the crew. We had, um, I think, two personal assistants and whatever we needed, but we could not leave unless they were right next to us. Um, so after everything was done, um, David Baker, um, and
What's the other guy?
it's been long enough. I can't remember.
Ben Abbott, was he on there?
Ben Abbott,
Yeah, Ben Abbott.
Ben Abbott, which is funny because that season they had a challenge. I was really, really hoping to get on it.
Mm.
Um, to
Against
forge against him,
against him, yeah.
yeah, and beat him. But Ben Abbott and then Grady, the host.
Hmm.
I can't remember. I think that was it. Um, they came up to me after I was done and talked to me for about 10, 15 minutes. And they actually had to go out of their way to talk to me. So it's funny because we were in the same hotel. Um, but like I said, they kept everybody secluded and they were not allowed to talk to us. Um, so like we'd see them at the bar and they'd be like, hey, what's up? But we can't really talk. Um, but um, David Baker and Grady and Ben Abbott. Can't remember. I think it was it. I think it was just the three of them.
Yeah.
Came up and talked to me, and which was pretty cool. I think that was probably the best part, especially since they weren't allowed to talk to us. They went out of their way and came and talked to me. Um, Doug McCarta,
Mycarta,
which
I think.
it sounds like McCarta. I don't think it's MyCarta, but
Oh.
um, it might be Mike. I don't know. I was everybody that ever says, "Oh, you should be on Forge and Fire," and then they're like, "It will kill."
Yeah, Doug Mycarta.
Yeah, drives me nuts. I hate that so much. Hate it. Everybody telling the same damn thing. And it was kind of funny because he did not come up. He did not make his way up to me and introduce himself and shake my hand. Um,
He could sense that
I
you
don't
didn't
know.
like it. It's like you don't
Huh?
like he. I said he could sense that you didn't like his little catchphrase. He's like, this
I,
man, he's a hater.
I don't know. I can't say I don't like the man because I don't know him real that well, but
Yeah. You don't.
it was funny because everybody else made their way up to me and went out of their way and not necessarily. I don't. There's no reason I don't. Other than I will kill or it will kill.
Yeah.
Other than that,
And
but
was this before or after you guys had forged?
this was after.
After.
Yeah,
Okay.
this was after.
So there's not really an excuse for him to not talk to you at the
Yeah.
same time as the other guys. I
Well,
figured.
like I said, I don't want. I don't
Yeah.
want to talk
No,
garbage about him.
there's no reason to.
I just. It's funny, and he's the one that likes that stupid knife. Well, I don't even know if he likes it. He uses it. I don't know. I guess he likes it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. It's funny to me. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But it was cool. It was cool to meet Dave Baker and Ben Abbott. Like I said, I wanted to compete against
Yeah.
Ben Abbott.
Ben Abbott seems really cool. He's very talented. He started
Well,
on
and
Forged in Fire.
we were kind of BSing a little bit, and I'm like, man, that anvil was so high. He's like, I actually had to bring them, or had the crew bring in a not a stool, but like a box or something, so he can be up a little bit higher,
Mm-hmm.
so he
Because
can
he's short.
forge
Is he shorter
properly.
too?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's a little bit taller than me, but yeah, he's short.
So he understood.
Yeah, no, he knew exactly what I was talking about. I
Yeah,
was
that
like,
guy's
well,
pretty
man, I
cool.
didn't know that was an option, but I don't know if I would have done it anyway.
I feel like it probably could have helped a little bit.
I would have helped a lot. It would have helped a lot.
Come
My
on,
shoulder
we
was.
need.
Oh,
Huh?
speaking of that, my shoulder was torn up for about 3-4 weeks, destroyed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was. I couldn't forge for 3 weeks at least. It was pretty torn
Yeah,
up,
that's pretty wild. I
but I
and
was still wanting to get to.
the height attributed to that, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely,
Oof.
definitely a blessing and an experience, and it was just so awesome. Something like I said to hand down to my children, a story.
Yep. And here's the story again, retold. They can watch
Yep,
them both back to back.
yep.
All right then. If you're good there, do you have anything else to say?
No,
Yeah.
just just don't. If you don't think you can do something, there's somebody who's started from scratch too.
Try.
Um, don't have no in your heart.
Don't have no
Just
in your
do it.
heart. Yep. The amount of times
Just
I've
try
heard
it.
that from you,
Yep.
I can't even count it. Don't have no in your heart.
Yep. Just try it. Worst thing that's gonna happen is you fail and you just can't have no in your heart.
Can't have no in your heart. Alrighty then. Yeah, I think we're good there. That was a good episode.
Yeah.
If you guys like to hear more about his blacksmithing or bladesmithing, then let us know. Check him out, Carbs Custom on Instagram. Carbs Customs, sorry, on Instagram for all your blade work stuff and coolers. But
Yep.
um, like us, follow us, press
All the buttons.
all the buttons, and yeah, thanks for listening.
Yep.